Hey everyone. So this is going to be a breakdown of the sculpt of Pickle Rick. And I'm going to show you from start to finish. The footage is going to be sped up. It's going to be about 3 times faster than the original sculpt was done, but you should still be able to follow along. Here I am just going over my reference photos, and this current one I'm probably going to be using as the texture because there's no speck on the image. So yeah, really important. Always gather as much reference, more reference than you think you're going to need, because you may end up needing it down the line. And the images don't take up that much room. And for this one, I'm just going to start from a sphere so you can see like the full project. From start to finish. And now this initial stage is just blocking out the forms. I cut off the edges and I'm just smoothing it out and just trying to get like a rough pickle shape, kind of like a cylinder with rounded edges with a little bit of a bend to it. And this is all just very rough right now. And, you know, projects like this, they always go through the first, you know, half to 75%. They just don't look great. They're very rough, and you just got to keep pushing forward, and then eventually they start to look good. So I just Dynamesh the new shape, and now I'm smoothing it out at the higher resolution. And I'm using the polish deformation tool just to get something a little bit smoother. And then the poly count was a little high, so I lowered the count for deformation and smoothed it again. And I'm going to block in the face, just rough where I want everything. The nose, the eyes, the eyebrows, and then I'm using inflate with subtractive on. I'm holding down Alt with inflate to inflate the eye bags. And you can see it's not going to match the reference exactly. It's going to be more of like a hyper realistic Pickle Man, and I'm like adding in more human features like nostrils and eye or you know, dark circles under his eyes that you just don't get in the cartoon version. Shaping out the face, trying to get a good balance of how much the facial features should stick out and how, or you know, versus how flat they should be, how flush they should be with the shape of the pickle. Right now I'm importing an eye. So I usually use the same eyes for every project. And this is just like, there's no texture on this. This is just to get the eye placement so that I can form the lids around the eyes, get the right size and shape in there. And here's another tricky balancing act with you know, cartoons where their eyes are usually right next to each other. If you actually could see the eyeballs, they'd probably be intersecting. So you gotta find a happy medium. And I'm angling them out slightly to give them sort of a walleye look, which makes the character look a little bit crazier, a little bit zanier. And here I am, like, roughing out where the shape of the eye should be. And the whole process of wrapping the eyelids around the eyes takes a long time. And you have to go through many passes usually to get it looking right. Clay tubes. Just trying to roughen those forms. You know, it's tough with a face like this because the whole face is kind of scrunched and you just don't have a lot of space to fit, like, where the cheekbones are, where the cheeks are, the nasolabial fold leading down to the mouth, because the mouth is so huge. It's definitely a balancing act to try to get it, you know, to blend between cartoony and realistic. I'm just carving in the nostrils. And if you notice, I really only use a few brushes. I really only use, like, standard, damn standard, inflate, clay tubes. I mean, that's pretty much it. Oh, and move. I use move and move topological a lot. Here I'm starting to roughen the lips and the chin, and I was debating whether actually to give him a chin or not, but I ended up keeping it. And it ended up working out. You'll see later. Here's the corners of the mouth. They need to be a little bit higher. Also a difficult expression, you know, because his mouth is so wide open that um, you could interpret it as him being scared or angry. And I think that it's definitely supposed to be a happy expression on his face. So nailing the lips is one of the trickiest areas of the whole face, and especially with an expression like this. Placing the eyes. And you'll notice I jump a lot. Maybe it's ADHD, but it's kind of like I just see a part of the model that I think needs to be worked on, and then I'll, you know, work on that one section and then keep moving on and keep bouncing around. And I've always kind of worked like this. I think for me, I like to gradually build up all of the forms of the face instead of, like, really finishing part of it and then moving on to another area, which to me is a little bit would be more difficult, I think. Yeah, and this is one of the techniques I use. I'm using the or holding down Alt and using Damn Standard to kind of, instead of carving in, it pinches the form outward, and it gives me like a nice sharp line to where the lip folds over the edge of the lip. And here I'm kind of giving him like a skull shape within the I guess confines of the pickle, where the shape of the forehead, your temples kind of dig in before they go to the back of the skull. And it's just little details like that that really sell the realism and really integrate the face into the body. But you don't want to go too far with it. Jumping back, refining the shapes of the eyes. And I'm giving him a little bit of a cheek raise, which really helps sell that happy expression. So now the face is definitely looking happier. The corners of the mouth are, I think, in a much better place. Refining the chin, getting the chin shape in there, and then really digging it in. If you're going to try to tackle a project like this, I think it definitely helps to try to do a couple of human faces before and really just nail the anatomy of a human face, and then use those tricks that you've learned working on, a human to then extrapolate that into, I guess, like a creature or a monster. Because I think subconsciously when the whoever's viewing it, even if they don't know anatomy well, they will be able to tell that this creature really couldn't exist. Like it won't be sold on the realism. Digging in that cheekbone area. And now just taking the move brush and just like pushing and pulling things, making, the shape a little bit clear where I want everything to be. Keep checking your model from every angle, digging in the cheekbones, the laugh lines, and always, digging in and then smoothing out, digging in and smoothing out. Refining the eye bag. So this is one of those things, if you're going to apply subsurface scattering to your model, you want to make sure that your lids are actually thin. Otherwise, if it's thick and the lid goes straight back and it's cutting through the eyeball, you're not going to get that subsurface scattering effect, because the way the shader will read the model, it'll think that it's thick where it really should be very thin. There you go, pulling out the center of the forehead. Carving in some dimples on the corner of the mouth. This is one of the trickiest areas to get, topology-wise and sculpting-wise. Now I'm taking another brush that I actually use pretty often is H-Polish, and I'm just flattening out the eyelid and giving it more of a sharp edge, and I think that really helps sell the form, and it also helps me block in where I want to have the eyelashes when I put them in with XGen. Again, I'm carving in some forms that are usually not very visible, and they probably won't be visible in the final because they'll be underneath the eyebrows, but it does help to have them in there and just carve them in and smooth them out, almost so you can't see them, but they will end up showing up in, very subtly in the final. Now I'm working on those bags under the eyes. And I'm flattening out that bottom lid area, creating that nice crease where the lid folds over. And eventually I'll have to raise the poly density. Or I'll do a Z remesh and then project back down, because you can see the detail is becoming finer and finer, and you're going to start seeing more and more faceting, and you're going to need more topology to work with when you get down to those finer details. Carving in the nostrils. More lip refinement, more chin refinement. Now I'm kind of placing the chin and the face within the pickle with sort of a double chin effect. Zooming out and checking the proportions and how it fits. So his face was a little bit big compared to the rest of him, so decided that I needed to pull him down a little bit, make his body a little bit bigger. Now I'm centering the pivot of the eyes and turning them out a little bit more, making them look a little bit weirder. And reforming the eyelids around that change. Make sure you save. Now I'm bringing in a set of teeth. And similar to the eyes, I always, try to reuse the same teeth as much as I can, or at least use them as a starting point. And it's just 5 pieces: the tongue, the top teeth, the bottom teeth, and then the top and bottom gums. And I could have put it in a folder and brought it in, but I just appended them all separately. And then, I'm going to create a folder, put them all in there, so I can scale them all uniformly. Don't have to worry about placing each one individually. And I turn on transparency mode, or not transparency mode, but when you transform a set within a folder, it'll go into that view where the horizontal lines and transparency, and it really helps. Now I took the top teeth out of the folder, and I'm just placing the bottom teeth, and I kind of angle them down. That's sort of how the jaw works, where it pivots at the top, and then when you open your mouth, it's actually not an up and down. It actually the jaw rotates. And I'm picking up the tongue and kind of placing it in the middle, try to match the reference a little bit. Oh, that was a mistake. So similar to the eyes, once I have the teeth in, it really helps with shaping the mouth and knowing how big it should be. And knowing where the lips should sit. So the front lip needed to be moved back a little bit. Now I'm digging back the mouth bag, similar to the eye bag. So you can see more of the teeth and gums. Although I think in the final render, you really won't see back there, but if there is a chance that you'll see it, you want it to be right. But it'll most likely be in total shadow. Adding some crow's feet in. Some wrinkles around the cheeks. An eye bag. Usually when I get to this stage of the model, it's a little bit trickier to know exactly what needs to be done because a lot of the primary forms are blocked in. And it's really just, you'll see me zooming out, looking for an area that needs refinement, and then zooming in, moving all over the model and making little fixes as I see they're needed. See, there's another area where the nostril kind of wraps in and under the bridge. Dynamesh again. Refining the shape of the eyebrows. Don't want them to make them look angry because they are kind of pressed together, but they're raised up, kind of in a surprised, happy type of expression. But if you put too many eyebrow wrinkles in there, it'll make it look, a little angry. Fixing the placement of the eyelids. One of the things you really want to look after with eyes is making sure that the eyelids are flush with the eyes, because if there's a little bit of a gap there, you'll get some weird shadows and it will look wrong. Pushing that mouth cavity back further, making sure you can see everything. Checking my reference. Refining the underside of the lip, making sure that it's the right level of thickness so that subsurface can work properly when I add the shader on. And then forming those lips to conform to the teeth and gums is, really important. You don't want anything floating. You want it to look like it all fits together. I'm puffing out the cheeks a little bit and the cheekbones. Still not happy with those eyebrow wrinkles and forehead wrinkles. Refining the shape of the head, and another balancing act of like, well, should it be more skull shaped or should it be just perfectly rounded? like a pickle. And now I duplicated it off, and I'm going to Z-remesh because I think that I've gotten the model to a point where I'm not going to be making any major changes that would require additional topology. And I'm just checking the topology of the Z-remesh. It doesn't need to be perfect because I'm not rigging this model or anything. If I was going to use this model in production or something, or I wanted to animate it, I would take it to Maya or another program and retopologize it by hand. But Z-remesh will work, and I'm not too worried about poly count. Yeah, so I just Z-remesh it again. I raised the poly count up a little bit because it gave me enough topology. And now I'm going to go through the projection. So be glad that it's sped up because a lot of this is very boring and it can take a minute to project. And you'll see I saved off another iteration as well. That's another good practice to get into is save off multiple iterations, especially when you're making a big step like moving away from Dynamesh and moving towards your Z-remesh. But if you ever wanted to move back to that earlier model, you'd have that save file. So the way I reproject is I take it up in steps. So I don't just go to the highest level subdivision. I take it up gradually. And then I'll do it. I try to match. So the poly count. So I think the Dynamesh had a few million polys, and so I took the Z-remesh, however many subdivisions it was, and then when it was around the same poly count, that's the highest level subdivision that I will reproject at. No really need to do it higher than that because you might get faceting, and that's what I'm fixing right now. Some of the topology is not perfect around the eyes and the corners of the mouth, but that's just to be expected. And you won't really notice that with the higher subdivision level, but it might cause some pinching issues. But I really can't complain because ZBrush does such an amazing job and saves so much time. Pushing the corners of the mouth a little bit, making the face a little bit more three-dimensional. So now that I have that extra topology, I can really go in for the fine shapes. So I have like these crow's feet roughly blocked in, but now that I have that extra topology, I can actually go in with dam standard very small and actually really carve out and make them look a little bit more natural. And I'm smoothing. And then around areas with tight carving, I will sometimes use the inflate brush, and that'll actually kind of pinch a little bit the edges of where it's carved in. Going back and refining things. I go over the same areas of the model over and over and over. Sometimes it's just a matter of keep working an area until it's right, and then taking a break when you don't think you can see anything else that it needs, and then coming back to it later. This is one of those areas with weird pinching from the remesh. So I'm just kind of digging it in, carving it in, and I'm going over with clay tubes to hide that area. And then smoothing it out. So you won't really ever see that. It'll be in shadow. And giving them some extra laugh lines in the process. Going up to my highest subdivision levels to really carve in those fine details. I'm giving him a little butt for his nose. Usually people, well, it doesn't show up on everybody, but sometimes if you have really low body fat percentage, you get that little crease in your middle of your nose. And I think that's just from the way that the cartilage is underneath. I think these long breaks, well, they're not that long because it's sped up, but where the model seems frozen, I'm either, getting up to do something or answering the door. So now I'm going in and actually taking a break from working on the face and actually putting in some of the details of the pickle body. That's an area that you won't ever see, but the bottom of the pickle kind of has like a little belly button where they cut it. And then it's got these kind of ridges that go around, and I left them like really subtle. I'm just kind of carving them in with a damp standard and then smoothing them out. They're kind of like the ridges like on a pumpkin or a gourd. And you don't want to go too overboard with this. Because a lot of this detail is going to be washed out when you do like a surface noise or something. But it is important to have in there. And now I'm finally breaking symmetry. One tip is actually to keep switching materials. So I think I've been working in a blend for the majority of it, and that really helps you to see where all of the details are. If you're working in like a skin shade, some of those details are going to be washed out. So now here, real simple technique. I'm just using a drag rectangle with a standard brush and an alpha to create the bumps. Save your project. It's nice that ZBrush has that autosave function. It has definitely saved my work more than once. So trying not to overdo these like little bumps on the surface. and trying to vary the size and placement of them. Some are like close together. Trying to have them spread out evenly. Putting a little dimple at the top. And just adding a couple small ones. This is something I thought about in some of the reference, were a little dense on some of the pickles or cucumbers, but I decided against using that because that's just going to come later with the, I'll just use an alpha for that. And finally getting the texture. I like to work in grayscale nearly for the entire model until the very end. I think the having texture on the model kind of obscures the details, and I want the model to be able to read well by itself without texture before I add on color. So I'm just bringing this into Spotlight and then painting on the texture. And it looks like I forgot to turn on symmetry because from when I was doing the bump, symmetry was off. So I turned symmetry back on. And then I'm going to go through and fill in the gaps, turn symmetry off, and fill in those missing spots with some asymmetrical detail. I'm just kind of lining it up as best I can. And I'm lowering my RGB intensity down to kind of blend it in with the rest of the texture that's already on there. Same with the face. And this way it's not going to look exactly like that texture that you're using from that image. I mean, you could bring in multiple images of pickles, but I think this one works the best just because it does not have any speck on it, or at least it doesn't look like it does. It looks like raw color data. So I'm just flipping that around, rotating, trying to match it up with the model, and then painting some more on. Checking to see if there's any missing spots. Looks like the bottom needed a little bit of work. So I wasn't happy. There's like that dark spot on the right side of his face. Kind of getting rid of that. And you can just keep going over and over until you've got like a really unique texture. So now what I'm doing is I'm similar to what I'm doing before, but I'm turning off the Z add, and I'm only adding color information on top of all those bumps that I did. And I'm just darkening that texture to help blend those bumps in with the bumps from the texture that was projected on there. And this is a really powerful technique. I could have waited to do these bumps until after, and then had RGB on as well as the add, which is what I'm doing right now. But I put them on first, but it's fine to do it in stages. But it is really powerful to be able to be adding color information and sculpting on the model at the same time. And if you plan out your model right, it'll end up saving you a lot of time, look really good. I'm adding some smaller bumps around the face to try to incorporate the face into the body, like kind of have everything blend together. I'm switching to flat shade, and I use this texture or this material a lot and it'll help show any areas of the model that need some work. So I'm just going in and lightening up some areas with standard brush, color spray, and an alpha. Darkening areas that I think should be darker based on faces, the eye bags, the nostrils, the lips, and it just helps it read a little bit more like a face. I think I go a little too far with this and I actually undo some of it. So I switched to flat shade and I wasn't totally happy with that. So I'm just hitting Control Z over and over and over again. Once you have this many undos in your undo queue, it's a little tough to scroll. So I just go and hit undo or Control Z a bunch of times. Yeah, so it's really helpful to switch back and forth from like blend, skin shade, and flat shade to see what your textures are really doing. There we go. Darkening up that mouth cavity. Again, you're not really going to see in here, but it does help. If you are going to light it in such a way that you'll be able to see the interior of the mouth, it helps to have a color in there. I'm just subtly darkening up the lips, the eye bags. And then the top that has a little bit of a stretch texture, so I'm just taking a lighter part of that projected image, and then projecting it on top, and then kind of blending it in. Oop. I guess I wasn't happy with that, so I'm just taking that technique with the alpha and the color spray, and just trying to match the projected image as best I can. Trying different things out. A lot of time gets taken up with these projects with just like experimenting, trying different techniques, seeing what works. Yeah, so the drag rectangle, or the drag rectangle with an alpha really wasn't looking that great. So now I'm back just using, I take down the RGB value very low, so it's a very subtle effect, and just slowly build in those colors with the alpha. And now I'm using ZBrush's like color correct function, although I think I ended up using this, or if I did, it was a very subtle effect, because it's really easy to take it too far with the tints. But I think that the green was a little too yellow on the pickle, and I think I ended up, when I did the surface noise, I did a little bit of a color blend and added a little bit of a darker green in there. This little right side of his face, I think needed to be lightened up a little bit. So I'm just going through with the same technique that I was using. ended up just having, reprojecting some of the detail in there. And I think that's pretty much it for this first round of iteration. And I think what I'm doing now is just projecting or exporting my maps, exporting the mesh, and then what I do is I work iteratively, and I take. See, I'm just doing a quick and dirty UVs. Although I think I ended up using the UVs in Maya. I wasn't happy with the UVs that the UV Master gave me. But once I get the model to this stage, it's a back and forth between this and Maya, where I take it in, I apply all the textures, the displacement map, the normal map, and then see where I'm at with my lighting, and then go back to ZBrush, fix some stuff, re-export everything out, and then it's back and forth and back and forth. So that pretty much does it for this. These are what the final images look like, and I'll just the only things that you guys didn't really see was that iterative process. I did XGen, I added some surface noise and some asymmetry to the face, but the bulk of the sculpt is what you guys just saw now in this video. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the whole process. I hope it wasn't too boring for you. If you'd like to see more of these videos, please leave me a like. Let me know in the comments. And until the next video, thanks for watching, guys.